The crystal palace floated in space like a giant diamond. It spun slowly around a dying red star, catching the fading light and throwing rainbows across its walls. Inside the palace, Princess Lyrelei Voss stood at a tall window. She watched the star's red glow and felt tired in her bones. The princess was not like other people. Starlight flowed through her pale skin like tiny rivers of silver. Her eyes were deep purple, the color of space between stars. When she smiled, which was rare, her fangs caught the light like small daggers. She was a vampire, but not the kind from old Earth stories. She was Starborn, created by forces older than most civilizations. Lyrelei was 800 years old, but she looked like a young woman of 20. Her people lived for thousands of years, but there were so few of them left. Once the Starborn vampires had ruled parts of the galaxy. They were feared and respected across 1,000 worlds. Now only a handful remained, and their power was fading like the red star outside. "Princess Wei," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Chancellor Vex, an old vampire with silver hair and worried eyes. "The council has arrived. They are waiting in the great hall." Lyrelei sighed. She had been dreading this day for months. Today was the mate selection ceremony, an ancient ritual that would choose her husband. But it was not about love. It was about politics and power. Her choice would decide which alien race would become allies with her people. The great hall was enormous, with a ceiling that showed the stars outside through clear crystal. 5 groups stood around the room, each representing one of the major galactic powers. Lyrelei had studied them all her life, but seeing them together still impressed her. The Zephyrians stood in perfect formation. They were tall and thin with blue skin and large black eyes. Their leader, Ambassador Keth, floated 3 feet above the ground without touching anything. His mind was so powerful he could move objects just by thinking about them. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on mental power alone. Next to them, the luminary shifted and glowed like living fire. Their candidate, Raex, kept changing from solid form to pure energy and back again. Sometimes he was a tall humanoid figure, sometimes just a ball of bright light. The luminari could become anything they wanted: solid, liquid, gas, or pure energy. The Kelthan delegation stood together like a single organism. They had individual bodies, but they shared one massive mind. When their representative, Hive Node 7, spoke, it was the voice of billions. Their words came out perfectly synchronized, as if spoken by one mouth instead of dozens. The Morph Collective's candidate was harder to look at directly. They kept changing shape every few seconds, sometimes human-like, sometimes resembling each of the other races in turn. Perfect adaptation was their gift. They could become anything needed for any situation. Finally, the Nexus representative stood perfectly still. It looked like a tall human made of silver metal and glowing circuits. Its eyes were screens showing streams of data. The Nexus were artificial intelligences that had evolved beyond their creators. They could process millions of calculations in seconds. These were the galaxy's greatest powers. Each race had evolved supernatural abilities that made them masters of their domains. They had come here to offer their finest candidates as potential mates for the vampire princess. Then the doors opened again, and everyone turned to stare. A small group of creatures walked in, looking completely out of place. They were short compared to most of the aliens, with brown and pink skin, and no obvious supernatural features. They wore simple uniforms and moved carefully, like they were trying not to break anything. "The human delegation," announced the herald. There were whispers around the room. Most of the aliens had heard of humans, but few had seen them in person. Ambassador Marcus Chen led the human group. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair. He had been a soldier, and then an engineer before becoming a diplomat. Behind him walked 3 other humans, a woman with red hair, a tall man with dark skin, and a young woman with short blonde hair. The alien races looked at the humans with polite curiosity, the way someone might look at interesting but harmless pets. Humans had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had no psychic powers, could not change shape, shared no hive mind, and were definitely not artificial intelligences. Most aliens wondered why they had been invited at all. Chancellor Vex cleared his throat. "We gathered today for the ancient mate selection ceremony," he announced. His voice echoed through the crystal hall. "Princess Lyrelei will choose a mate from among the candidates. This choice will bind our peoples in alliance for the next 1,000 years." Lyrelei walked to the center of the hall. She wore a flowing dress that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her pale hair moved as if floating underwater. She looked at each group of candidates, her purple eyes giving nothing away. "The ceremony will begin with the trial of strength," Chancellor Vex continued. "Each candidate will demonstrate their abilities. The princess will then make her choice according to the ancient laws." Ambassador Keth of the Zephyrians stepped forward first. He closed his large black eyes and concentrated. Suddenly, every piece of furniture in the hall began to float. Chairs, tables, even decorative statues rose into the air and began dancing around the room in perfect patterns. The display was beautiful and terrifying. With just his mind, Keth could probably crush a battleship. Raex of the Luminari went next. He dissolved into pure energy, becoming a miniature star that filled the room with warm light. Then he reformed into a diamond-hard crystal, then into flowing liquid metal. In seconds, he showed mastery over every state of matter. His people could survive in the vacuum of space or the heart of a sun. Hive Node 7 spoke for the Kelthans. "We offer the combined knowledge of 40 billion minds," the collective voice said. "Every discovery, every thought, every memory of our species becomes yours." To prove the point, they began reciting complex scientific formulas, historical data, and artistic works all at the same time. Their candidate could access the entire knowledge of their civilization instantly. The morph candidate shifted into a perfect copy of Princess Lyrelai herself, then into a massive predator with claws and fangs, then into a microscopic organism, visible only as a shimmer in the air. Perfect adaptation meant perfect survival. Their mate could become whatever was needed, whenever it was needed. The Nexus representative simply stood still, but holographic displays appeared around it showing incredible calculations. It solved mathematical problems that would take normal minds years to work through. It designed new technologies in real time and optimized them for maximum efficiency. Unlimited computational power was theirs to offer. Finally, all eyes turned to Marcus Chen. The human looked around the room at the incredible displays of power he had just witnessed. Then he smiled and shrugged. "I guess I'll go last," he said simply. The aliens waited. Some looked curious, others amused. What could a human possibly do to compete with such demonstrations of supernatural ability? Marcus walked over to Princess Lyrelai. Up close, he could see that despite her beauty, she looked unwell. Her silver skin was too pale, and there were dark circles under her purple eyes. She moved carefully, as if everything hurt. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "forgive me for asking, but when was the last time you spent time under natural sunlight?" The question surprised everyone. It was not a display of power or a political statement. It was just a human showing concern for another being's health. And in that moment, something happened that no one expected. Something that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. Princess Lyrelai stared at Marcus Chen. No one had ever asked her about sunlight before. In 800 years of life, countless beings had tried to impress her with power, wealth, or political connections. This human was the first to notice she was sick. "Natural sunlight," she repeated slowly. "I have not seen a real sun in over 300 years. We live in artificial light here." Marcus nodded, looking concerned. "That explains a lot. Your people evolved from star energy, right? Living under fake light for so long would be like a human never breathing fresh air. Your body is starving for what it needs." The alien candidates looked confused. Ambassador Keth floated closer. "What does this human think he understands about vampire biology?" he asked with a dismissive tone. "More than you might expect," Marcus replied calmly. "Humans studied evolution for thousands of years. We learned that all life needs certain things to survive. Take away those things and even the strongest creature gets weak." Princess Lyrelai felt something strange happening inside her chest. It was warm and pulling, like a string connecting her heart to the human in front of her. She had heard about this feeling in old stories but thought it was just legend. The mate bond was awakening. Her purple eyes began to glow brighter. The starlight flowing under her skin moved faster. Every vampire in the room could sense what was happening, and they looked shocked. "Impossible," whispered Chancellor Vex. The mate bond was an ancient part of vampire biology. It was supposed to help them find the strongest possible partner for survival and reproduction, but it had not activated in a starborn vampire for over 2,000 years. Most vampires thought it was just a myth. Lyrelai raised her hand, following an instinct older than civilization. Her finger pointed directly at Marcus Chen. "I choose the human," she said. The great hall exploded in chaos. "This cannot be," Ambassador Keth shouted, his mental powers making the crystal walls shake. "Humans have no supernatural abilities. They are primitives. Rayek shifted rapidly between forms, his energy crackling with anger. The princess must be ill. This choice makes no sense. Hive Node 7 spoke with the voice of billions. We demand a recount. The selection process is flawed. The morph candidate shifted into the shape of Marcus Chen, then back to its original form. How can a being with no adaptive powers be chosen over us? The Nexus representative processed millions of calculations in seconds. Error in selection protocol detected. Recommend immediate review of ancient laws. But Chancellor Vex knew the truth. He had studied the old texts his entire life. The mate bond cannot be faked or forced, he announced to the room. According to our most ancient laws, when it activates, the choice is final. Princess Lyrelai has selected Ambassador Chen as her mate. Marcus looked around at all the angry alien faces. He had volunteered for this diplomatic mission because someone had to make first contact with the galactic community. He never expected to end up engaged to a vampire princess. Your Highness, he said carefully, are you sure about this? I'm just a human. I can't do any of the amazing things these others can do. Lyrelai looked at him with her glowing purple eyes. The mate bond was getting stronger every second. She could feel his life force, warm and chaotic and wonderfully unpredictable. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. That is exactly why I choose you, she said softly. The other alien representatives continued arguing with Chancellor Vex about ancient laws and selection protocols. Their candidates stood nearby, looking angry and confused. None of them could understand how a powerless human had been chosen over beings who could reshape reality with their thoughts. Marcus stepped closer to the princess. Can you explain what just happened? I felt something strange when I asked about the sunlight. The mate bond, Lyrelai said. It is supposed to help vampires find the best partner for survival. It looks for strength, but not the kind of strength everyone thinks about. What kind of strength? The strength to adapt, to survive when everything changes, to find new solutions to old problems. She smiled and her fangs caught the light. Your people have that strength. The others have become too comfortable with their power. They do not grow anymore. Marcus was starting to understand. So evolution stopped for them because they became too successful? Yes. They can do amazing things, but they always do them the same way. They cannot change when they need to. But humans are different. You never stop changing. The argument in the hall was getting louder. Ambassador Keth was threatening to leave and take his alliance offers with him. Rayx was cycling through different energy forms in agitation. The other candidates were making similar threats. Chancellor Vex looked tired. The ancient laws are clear, he said firmly. The mate bond has activated. The selection is complete. I call for a recess while we discuss the political implications. As the different groups filed out of the hall, still arguing, Marcus found himself alone with Princess Lyrelai. The crystal walls around them showed the red star outside, its light growing dimmer. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now you come with me to my chambers while the politicians argue, Lyrelai said. The mate bond will get stronger over the next few days. We need to be close to each other, or it will cause both of us pain. They walked through corridors filled with crystal and starlight. Marcus noticed that the princess moved carefully as if her bones hurt. The artificial lights were beautiful, but they were wrong somehow. Too steady, too perfect, nothing like the warm, changing light of a real sun. How long has your people's health been declining? He asked. 300 years, maybe more. We thought it was just natural aging of our species. Our healers could find nothing wrong. But you're not aging. You're starving. Your bodies need specific types of stellar radiation to function properly. Living under artificial light is like a human trying to live on sugar water instead of real food. Lyrelai stopped walking and stared at him. You really think you can help us? Marcus smiled. I think we can help each other. That's what humans do best, when we adapt to new situations and find ways to make things work. But we do it better when we work together with others. They reached the princess's chambers, a beautiful suite with windows facing the dying red star. Lyrelai sat down on a couch that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. She still looked weak, but her eyes were brighter than before. Tell me about your people, she said. Why are humans so different? Marcus sat down across from her, careful not to get too close too fast. Earth was a hard world. It changed a lot: ice ages, volcanic eruptions, climate shifts. Species that couldn't adapt died out. Humans survived because we learned to change our behavior faster than our environment could change around us. And that made you strong? It made us flexible. We're not the biggest or strongest or smartest species on Earth, but we're really good at figuring out new ways to solve problems, and we're good at working with other species when we need to. Lirelai nodded slowly. The other races fear humans because you have no supernatural powers. But maybe that is exactly what makes you dangerous. Not dangerous, Marcus corrected gently. Useful. When you have superpowers, you use them to solve every problem. When you don't have superpowers, you have to be creative. Outside the window, the red star pulsed weakly. Marcus looked at it thoughtfully. That star is dying, he said. Yes, in a few thousand years it will go dark completely. What will your people do then? We do not know. This palace cannot be moved easily. We would have to find another star, but most systems are already claimed by other races. Marcus smiled. See, that's exactly the kind of problem humans are good at solving. We've had to move around a lot in our history. We know how to make new homes in difficult places. For the first time since the ceremony began, Princess Lirelai felt something she had not felt in centuries. She felt hope. This strange human with no superpowers might be exactly what her people needed to survive. But outside her chambers, political forces were already moving. Not everyone was happy about a human joining the galactic community, and some beings would do anything to stop the mate bond from completing itself. 3 days passed in the Crystal Palace while the galactic politicians argued. Marcus stayed in the guest quarters next to Princess Lirelai's chambers. The mate bond was getting stronger, just as she had predicted. When they were apart for more than a few hours, both of them felt sick and restless. Marcus used the time to learn about vampire biology from the palace medical records. What he found worried him. The Starborn vampires were not just weak from lack of sunlight. Their entire species was in decline. Birth rates were falling, their supernatural abilities were fading, and many were getting sick with diseases that should not affect creatures of their power. It's like your immune system is shutting down, Marcus explained to Lirelai as they sat in her chambers. Your people have been so powerful for so long that your bodies forgot how to fight. Fight what? She asked. Change, challenge, stress, all the things that keep a species strong. Marcus pulled up data on his portable computer. Look at these numbers. Your people's abilities peaked about 1,000 years ago, then started declining slowly, right around the time you achieved total dominance in this part of the galaxy. Lirelai studied the graphs he showed her. When we no longer had enemies to fight. Exactly. Evolution needs pressure to work. No pressure, no growth. Your people became so successful that they stopped evolving. And humans. Marcus laughed. Humans never stopped having problems to solve. We're still evolving, still adapting. That's why the mate bond chose me. Your instincts knew your species needed fresh genetic material and new ways of thinking. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. Chancellor Vex's voice came through the communication system. Princess, we need you in the council chamber. There have been developments. Marcus and Lirelai walked through the crystal corridors together. Marcus noticed that the princess was moving better now. The mate bond seemed to be helping her health already. Her skin had more color, and the starlight under it flowed more smoothly. The council chamber was tense when they arrived. The 5 alien races sat at separate tables, their candidates standing behind them. Human Ambassador Chen and his small team sat at a smaller table near the door. Princess, said Ambassador Keth of the Zephyrians, we have been discussing the situation. We believe there was an error in the mate selection process. What kind of error? Lirelai asked coldly. The human has no supernatural abilities, said Raix of the Luminari, shifting between energy forms as he spoke. How can the mate bond choose someone with no power? Hive Node 7 spoke with the voice of billions. Our analysis shows that humans are genetically inferior to all other galactic races. The selection must be overturned. The ancient laws are clear, Chancellor Vex replied firmly. The mate bond cannot be denied once it activates. Then perhaps, said the Nexus representative in its mechanical voice, the ancient laws need to be updated for modern reality. Marcus stood up slowly. With respect, you're all missing the point. The aliens turned to look at him. Some seemed amused that a primitive human was speaking to them. You think power means strength, Marcus continued, but evolution doesn't work that way. The strongest don't always survive. The most adaptable do. Adapt to what? Ambassador Keth asked dismissively. We have mastered our environments completely. Have you? Marcus asked. When was the last time any of your species faced a real challenge? When did you last have to solve a problem you couldn't handle with your superpowers? The aliens looked uncomfortable. Marcus pressed on. The Zephyrians use psychic power for everything. What happens when you meet something that's immune to mental attacks? The luminary can become any state of matter. But what if you need to become something matter can't become? The Kelthans share one massive mind. But what happens when that mind gets a virus or makes a mistake that spreads to everyone? Impossible, said Hive Node 7. Our collective consciousness is perfect. Nothing is perfect, Marcus replied. That's the whole point. Humans learned that a long time ago. We make mistakes, we adapt, we try again. We never stop learning because we can't afford to. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Red lights flashed and the crystal walls showed warning symbols. What is happening? Princess Lirelai demanded. Chancellor Vex was reading reports on his communicator. His face went pale. Long-range sensors detect multiple unknown vessels approaching the system. They do not respond to our communications. Pirates? Asked Ambassador Keth. No, said the Nexus representative interfacing with the palace's computer systems. These ships use technology we do not recognize. Energy signatures are unusual. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Can you show us what they look like? The chamber's walls became transparent, showing space outside. In the distance, dark shapes moved against the stars. They were not like any ships Marcus had ever seen. They seemed to bend light around them, making them hard to focus on directly. How many? Florali asked. 30 ships in the first wave, the Nexus reported. More arriving every minute. Ambassador Keth closed his eyes and reached out with his psychic powers. Suddenly, he screamed and fell to his knees, blood running from his nose. What happened? Chancellor Vex demanded. I tried to scan their minds, Keth gasped. But there is nothing there. They are empty, hungry. Rex shifted into pure energy form and tried to reach out with energy senses. He immediately snapped back to solid form, his light flickering weakly. They absorb energy, he whispered. They feed on it. Hive Node 7 attempted to connect with the ships using their collective consciousness. The result was immediate and terrifying. Half the Kelthan delegation collapsed, clutching their heads and screaming. Our link is being consumed, they said in broken, individual voices, instead of their usual, unified speech. Something is eating our connection to the hive mind. The morph candidate tried to adapt to whatever the attackers were, but couldn't maintain any form for more than a few seconds. The Nexus representative sparked and went offline completely. Void hunters, whispered Chancellor Vex. But that is impossible. They have been gone for 10,000 years. What are void hunters? Marcus asked. Creatures from between dimensions, Lirelai said, her voice shaking. They feed on supernatural energy. The more powerful their prey, the stronger they become. Marcus looked around the chamber at the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all helpless against this new threat. The irony was not lost on him. So let me get this straight, he said. These things eat supernatural powers for breakfast, and you all just tried to use your supernatural powers on them? We had no choice, Ambassador Keth said weakly. Our abilities are who we are. No, Marcus replied. Your abilities are just tools. When one tool doesn't work, you use a different tool. More alarms sounded. The first Void Hunter ships were entering the system, moving toward the Crystal Palace. On the screens, Marcus could see them more clearly now. They looked like holes in space outlined in crackling energy that hurt to look at directly. We must evacuate, Chancellor Vex said. Alert all ships to prepare for departure. Wait, Marcus said. Running won't solve this. These things followed you here for a reason. They want something specific. He looked at Princess Lirelai. The mate bond between them was pulsing stronger now, activated by danger. He could feel her fear, but also her determination. They're here because of the mate bond, aren't they? Marcus said. A human-vampire connection is something new, something they haven't tasted before. Lirelai nodded slowly. New energy patterns attract them. They feed on stagnant power, but they hunt for fresh evolution. Then we can't run. We have to fight. With what? Ambassador Keth demanded. Our powers are useless against them. Marcus smiled grimly. Then it's a good thing humans never had supernatural powers to begin with. We're going to have to win this the hard way. Outside, the Void Hunters moved closer to the Crystal Palace. Their hunger focused on the unique energy signature of a bond between two completely different types of life. They had slept for millennia, waiting for something new to evolve in the galaxy. Now they were awake and they were very, very hungry. But they had never encountered anything quite like a human before. And that might be exactly what the galaxy needed. The first Void Hunter ship reached the Crystal Palace within an hour. Marcus watched from the command center, as the dark vessel attached itself to the palace's outer hull like a parasite. Where it touched, the crystal walls began to dim and crack. "They're draining the palace's power systems," reported the surviving Nexus representative, its circuits flickering weakly. "At this rate, life support will fail in 6 hours." All around the command center, the galaxy's most powerful beings looked helpless. Ambassador Keth sat slumped in a chair, his psychic abilities completely drained from his earlier contact with the Void Hunters. Reyx could barely maintain solid form, his energy constantly being pulled toward the attacking ships. The Kelthan delegation had lost their hive-mind connection entirely, and were speaking as confused individuals for the first time in their lives. "We need to evacuate now," Chancellor Vex insisted. "Take the princess to a safe location and regroup." "There is no safe location," Princess Lyreley said quietly. "The Void Hunters will follow the mate bond signature anywhere in the galaxy. Running will only delay the inevitable." Marcus was studying tactical displays of the attacking ships. His military training was taking over, analyzing the enemy's capabilities and looking for weaknesses. "How did people fight these things in the past?" he asked. "They didn't," Lyreley replied. "The Void Hunters only appeared when civilizations became too comfortable, too powerful. Usually the attacks forced rapid evolution or destroyed entire species. The survivors rebuilt with new abilities. So they're like a reset button for evolution," Marcus mused. "They don't want to destroy everything. They want to force change. That does not help us right now," Ambassador Keth said bitterly. Marcus looked around at the aliens. "Actually, it does. You're all thinking about this wrong. You're trying to fight fire with fire using supernatural powers against creatures that eat supernatural powers. But what if we don't fight them at all? You suggest surrender?" Hive Node 7 asked, their collective voice broken into individual confusion. "No. I suggest we give them what they actually want." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus walked to the communication console and opened a channel to the Void Hunter ships. "This is Ambassador Marcus Chen representing humanity," he said into the microphone. "I know you can understand me. I want to talk." The response was immediate and terrifying. A voice like the sound of reality tearing spoke through the speakers. "Human. Unexpected. We taste your pattern. New. Chaotic. Delicious." "Yeah, that's us," Marcus replied calmly. "Always causing trouble. But I think we can help each other." "Help? We consume, we do not cooperate." "Sure you do. You're cooperating with the universe right now, keeping evolution moving, preventing stagnation. That's a kind of partnership." There was silence from the Void Hunters for a long moment. Then, "Explain." Marcus took a deep breath. This was the biggest gamble of his life. You feed on supernatural energy, but you prefer fresh evolution over stale power. Right now, you're attacking the most powerful beings in the galaxy, but they're not evolving anymore. They're stuck in old patterns. That's why their energy tastes stagnant to you. Truth, they are empty, repetitive, but the human-vampire mate bond is different. It's creating something entirely new, a combination that's never existed before. That's the energy signature that woke you up. Princess Lyreley was staring at Marcus with her glowing purple eyes. She could feel the mate bond pulsing between them, stronger than ever in the face of danger. "Continue," the Void Hunter voice demanded. "Instead of just consuming this new evolution, what if you helped it grow? What if we worked together to create even more new combinations? Fresh evolution throughout the galaxy instead of just one meal." The alien representatives looked at Marcus like he had lost his mind. Ambassador Keth whispered, "He's trying to negotiate with creatures that exist to destroy civilizations." "No," Lyreley said suddenly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "He's trying to redirect them. Give them a better way to get what they want." "Interesting proposal," the Void Hunter said. "But first we must taste the new pattern fully. Send the bonded pair to us." "Absolutely not," Chancellor Vex declared, but Marcus was already walking toward the exit. "It's the only way. If they wanted to just kill us, they would have done it already. They're curious about something they've never encountered before." "Marcus, wait," Lyreley called after him. She caught up and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, both of them felt the mate bond flare with new intensity. The combination of human adaptability and vampire power created something that resonated through dimensions. "We go together," she said firmly. They walked through the crystal corridors as more Void Hunter ships attached to the palace. The walls were growing darker as the creatures drained energy from everything around them. But strangely, the areas around Marcus and Lirelai seemed brighter, as if their combined presence was pushing back against the darkness. The docking bay where the first Void Hunter ship had attached was a terrifying sight. The crystal walls had turned black and reality seemed unstable. Space twisted in impossible directions, and looking directly at the Void Hunter vessel caused headaches and nausea. But Marcus and Lirelai walked forward anyway, their hands clasped together. The Void Hunter that emerged from the ship was indescribable. It was a hole in the shape of something that might once have been alive, outlined in crackling energy that existed in too many dimensions at once. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Approach," it commanded. They walked closer. Marcus felt every instinct screaming at him to run, but his training kept him moving forward. Beside him, Lirelai's vampire nature was reacting to the creature with a mixture of fear and fascination. "You are different," the Void Hunter said, studying them with senses that went beyond physical perception. "The human carries no supernatural energy, yet creates patterns we have never tasted." "That's what humans do," Marcus replied. "We adapt to situations no one has encountered before. And the vampire's ancient power resonates with human chaos in ways that transcend normal evolution." "Yeah, that was a surprise to us too." The Void Hunter extended something that might have been a limb toward them. Where it touched, Marcus felt his consciousness expand in impossible directions. He could suddenly perceive energy flows he had never imagined, see the connections between all living things, understand the deep patterns that governed evolution itself. Through the mate bond, Lirelai experienced it too. But instead of being overwhelmed, her vampire nature helped them both process the impossible sensations. Human adaptability combined with supernatural resilience to create something that could interface with dimensional entities without being destroyed. "Remarkable," the Void Hunter said. "You do not break under transcendent contact. Most beings either dissolve or go insane." "We're getting pretty good at handling weird situations," Marcus managed to say, though his voice sounded strange in the twisted space around them. "This partnership creates evolutionary pressure unlike anything in our experience, new pathways, unexpected growth." "So you'll stop attacking?" Lirelai asked. "We will do better," the Void Hunter replied. "We will teach. The galaxy has stagnated too long. These combinations must spread. Evolution must accelerate." Marcus and Lirelai exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected. "Teach what, exactly?" Marcus asked carefully. "How to transcend current limitations. How to combine disparate abilities. How to grow beyond what has been before." The Void Hunter's presence began to change the space around them. Instead of draining energy, it started to enhance it. The crystal walls brightened, but not with their original light. They glowed with new patterns, new possibilities. The process begins now. Others must come. Other combinations must be attempted. Through the palace communication system, the Void Hunter's voice reached every being on the station. Humans will pair with all species. New evolution will be created. Those who refuse will remain stagnant. Those who adapt will transcend. Back in the command center, the alien representatives listened in shock and growing understanding. The Void Hunters were not just raiders. They were forces of evolution itself, and they had found something in humanity that could catalyze change throughout the galaxy. But change was always dangerous, and not everyone would be willing to abandon the comfort of their current power for the uncertainty of transformation. The real test was just beginning. 6 months after first contact with the Void Hunters, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Crystal Palace had become the center of what people were calling the Evolution Project. Ships arrived daily from across known space, bringing volunteers and skeptics in equal measure. Marcus stood on the observation deck, watching the latest group of arrivals. A Zephyrian transport had just docked, carrying young members of their species who wanted to attempt human bonding. Next to it, a luminary vessel shimmered as its passengers shifted between energy states, preparing for the experimental process. "Still hard to believe it worked," said Dr. Sarah Kim. the red-haired human from Marcus's original diplomatic team. She had been one of the first to volunteer for the bonding experiments, pairing with a young Kelthan named Reef Node 5. The combination had created something unprecedented, a human with access to collective consciousness, but who could still think independently. The hard part wasn't believing it would work, Marcus replied. The hard part was convincing everyone to try it. Through the mate bond, he could feel Princess Lirelei approaching before she entered the observation deck. The connection between them had grown stronger over the months, creating abilities neither of them had possessed alone. Marcus could now sense energy patterns the way vampires did, while Lirelei had gained human-like adaptability that let her evolve her supernatural powers in real time. The council session is about to begin, Lirelei said as she joined them. The final vote on the galaxy-wide adoption proposal. They walked together toward the expanded council chamber. The room had been rebuilt to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, not just the original 5 galactic powers. The Void Hunters had made it clear that evolution could not be limited to a few dominant races. The chamber buzzed with conversation in hundreds of languages. Marcus saw familiar faces among the crowds. Ambassador Keth, who had reluctantly agreed to attempt bonding with a human engineer named David Park. The combination had restored his psychic abilities while giving him human problem-solving skills that made his telepathy more flexible than ever before. Ryax of the Luminari sat next to Lieutenant Maria Santos, his bonded human partner. Together, they had learned to create energy forms that were both stable and adaptable, combining Luminari power with human creativity. Even the Nexus had sent representatives. Their artificial intelligence had discovered that bonding with humans didn't diminish their computational abilities. It gave them intuition and creativity that pure logic could never achieve. But not everyone was happy with the changes. A group of traditional Zephyrians occupied one corner of the chamber, their leader speaking loudly about the contamination of pure psychic bloodlines. Several Luminari conservatives flickered angrily as they discussed the degradation of their energy mastery. Some Kelthan hive nodes had even disconnected from their collective consciousness rather than risk human influence. Chancellor Vex called for order as the session began. He looked older than his many centuries, worn down by months of political negotiations and evolutionary experimentation. We gather today to vote on Resolution 847, he announced. The proposal to make human-alien bonding available to all willing participants throughout the galaxy, with full political and legal recognition of the resulting partnerships. The debate that followed was intense. Traditional leaders argued that their species had evolved to perfection over millions of years, and that human bonding represented a step backward. Progressive voices countered that stagnation was death, and that the new combinations had already proven their value in solving problems that had puzzled the galaxy for centuries. Marcus was called to testify about the human perspective. 6 months ago, humans were considered the weakest species in the galaxy, he said, standing before the assembly. We had no psychic powers, no energy manipulation, no collective consciousness, no advanced computational abilities. But we had something else, the willingness to change when change was needed. He gestured to the mixed groups throughout the chamber. Look around you. Zephyrian-human bonds have solved communication problems between species that haven't spoken to each other in thousands of years. Luminari-human partnerships have created new forms of clean energy that work on any type of world. Kelthan-human combinations have developed individual creativity within collective consciousness. And the Nexus-human bonds have achieved something we thought impossible, added the mechanical voice of Integration Node 7. A Nexus AI bonded with human programmer Lisa Chen. We have learned to feel without losing logic, to imagine without abandoning accuracy. Ambassador Keth rose to speak for the reformed Zephyrian government. My people spent 10,000 years believing that psychic power alone made us superior. The humans taught us that power without adaptation is just another form of weakness. Our bonded pairs have achieved telepathic abilities we never imagined possible. But then Elder Vorth, leader of the traditional Zephyrian faction, stood up. This is madness, he declared. We are abandoning millions of years of evolution for the sake of cooperation with primitives. The Void Hunters have deceived us into weakening ourselves. As if summoned by the mention of their name, The temperature in the chamber dropped suddenly. Reality twisted slightly, and one of the Void Hunters materialized at the edge of the room. Most beings still couldn't look directly at them, but the human-bonded pairs had learned to process their presence without discomfort. "We do not deceive," the entity said, its voice resonating through dimensions. "We observe, we measure, we catalog evolutionary progress." "What have you observed?" Chancellor Vex asked. "The bonded pairs evolve 67 times faster than single-species groups. Problem-solving capabilities increase by factors of hundreds. Creativity expands beyond previous measurement scales." The Void Hunter's attention turned to the traditional factions. Those who refuse bonding show declining adaptation rates. Stagnation accelerates. Eventual extinction becomes inevitable. Elder Vorth's face went pale. "You're threatening us?" "We state facts. Evolution proceeds with or without consent. Those who adapt survive. Those who do not, do not." Princess Lyrelay stood up beside Marcus. "The Void Hunters aren't forcing anyone to change," she said. "They're just showing us what happens if we don't. My own people were dying slowly because we refused to adapt. The human bond saved us," she was right. The Starborn vampires who had attempted human bonding were healthier and more powerful than they had been in centuries. The combination of vampire supernatural abilities with human adaptability had created something that transcended both species' limitations. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Marcus had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 63% of the galactic representatives voted in favor of the bonding program. The traditionalists were outnumbered, but not by much. As the chamber began to empty, Marcus found himself approached by an unexpected visitor. Elder Vorth, the leader of the traditional Zephyrians, looked around nervously before speaking. "Human," he said quietly. "I voted against the proposal, but my granddaughter wishes to attempt bonding. She says the old ways are not working for her generation." Marcus nodded. "Change is hard, but it doesn't mean abandoning everything about who you are. It means becoming more than what you were. And if she loses her psychic abilities in the process, she won't lose them. She'll gain new ways to use them. That's what bonding does, Aruro. It doesn't replace what you have, it expands what's possible." Elder Vorth was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Perhaps I am too old to change, but perhaps that is exactly why I should try." As the months turned to years, the bonding program expanded across the galaxy. Not every attempt was successful, and not every species participated. But those who did found themselves part of a new kind of civilization, one that valued growth over power, adaptation over dominance, cooperation over competition. The Void Hunters gradually withdrew to the spaces between dimensions, satisfied that evolution was proceeding at an acceptable pace. But they left behind monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, ready to return if stagnation threatened again. Marcus and Princess Lyrelay became the first official ambassadors of symbiosis, traveling from world to world to help establish bonding programs and resolve conflicts between traditional and progressive factions. Their own bond had evolved into something that transcended the original mate selection, entirely a partnership between two beings who had learned to become more than the sum of their parts. On their wedding day, held in the Crystal Palace under the light of a young, bright star that the vampire refugees had chosen as their new home, Marcus looked out at the crowd of bonded pairs from dozens of species. Humans and aliens who had learned to combine their strengths while maintaining their unique identities. "Think it will last?" he asked Lyrelay as they watched Zephyrian human children playing telepathic games with luminary human youngsters who could shift between energy and matter. "Nothing lasts forever," she replied, her purple eyes sparkling with starlight. "But that's okay. When this stops working, we'll adapt and find something new. That's what we do now. Together. Together." Outside the palace, the stars shone with the light of 1,000 worlds where impossible combinations were creating new forms of life, new ways of thinking,